Well, welcome to a celebration of the life of Jack Mongovin. Really, all of us are happy everybody could make it. I know some folks have come a long way. I wanted to, so many of us were part of Jack's life here or there. He told stories about all of you, to all of us. But there are some folks, I certainly haven't met his family, but there you go. His father Harold is here. His stepmom Eleanor. Our family's all kind of sitting up in here. His brother Hank and Jim, Dave, sister Nancy. And Dave's sons, Ryan. Who's Ryan? Somewhere. Brandon. Nancy's daughter, Reagan. And you have way better handwriting, by the way, than Beth did. Thank you. And Sam, right there. Then his uncle Jack. Here, second row. See, there's Dan, his son, Jack's son, his wife Emma.
Cousin, Jack's cousin.
Oh, cousin, sorry. Right, I said that before, yeah. Well, he looks so young. That would have been a shock to everybody. More to this family than I thought. Okay, Patty. And her husband Randy, and their sons Tucker and Dylan, and Kathy and Debbie. Okay, I think I got everybody. Oh.
My ex-husband Herb.
Oh, Herb, sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Okay. Just to go back to the song, try to set the tone. I mean, it's a tough day. We've all had a little bit of time to come to terms with his passing, but I'm sure everybody's lost folks before, and it never really goes away. But today, the idea is we all get together and celebrate his life, and we're all going to pass at some point. He's just a little bit ahead of us. With regards to this song, but also try to set tone. And there are going to be tearful moments, and you guys got to, somebody stop. I got to find some people that don't cry, because then I'll start. Look over here for a bit, because nobody's going. But there's, obviously this is an opportunity for you to get, you can say things to Jack. Any number of us have felt that Jack is kind of around us. Yes, he's here, whatever, but with that in mind, he wouldn't want this to be too glum. Jack was Jack too, and big personality. Human Resources isn't here today, so get a sense we can be a little bit. This is one for Jack. Anyway, just kind of set a little bit of a tone here. He was a huge Beatles fan. I didn't know until a day or so that was going to be played. Years ago, we did a Paul McCartney video. Paul McCartney and Linda came here. It was a thing called Flying to My Home. It was back in 1993, and Jack and I had just moved over to the CG department. Computer graphics is really wonderful in that you can paint something, and if you don't like the stroke, you can hit remove, and you'll go back to where you were. It was, Jack had obviously started out here when everything was painting, literally painting, and tough to undo your strokes. But anyway, so he totally embraced that, and one of the first projects he worked on was a Paul McCartney video. And not a real memorable song, but it was called, say, Flying to My Home. And a lot of it happened out on the main stage. They put Paul up on wires. So he's flying around like this, flying around like this, flying off in the back. And Jack's job was to paint out the wires. And he was an incredible artist. It's not a huge task. Didn't take him a lot of time. He said, John, let me show you what I got so far. And he showed me this one shot of Paul flying off, and he had painted off his pants. And I said, nah, I'm just guessing that that's not going to fly. And I did find it online. Well, not that version online. I guess that would be, instead of here comes the sun, here comes the moon. Just to put a little bit of a tone on where this could go. I was thinking about the first time I met Jack. I came on Howard the Duck. How's that for an auspicious start? Jack was here a couple of years before. He, I think, started on E.T. So that's a pretty impressive one. But I came, and this is down in Kerner, and I had to come in the back door, and it was kind of, they said, you know, drive up, go in there, and we'll catch up with you. And the door was locked, and I knocked, and Jack opened up. I didn't know it was Jack, but he and Joanne at the point were in the middle of some conversation, and he was roaring with laughter, and just opened the door and said, oh, hey, come on in. I had no idea who, he was, or he didn't know who I was. Then, go to just a few weeks ago, we were having the benefit that we do for the AIDS Emergency Fund, the Breast Cancer Emergency Fund here, and he and I were both stars of one of the videos. And we were going over our performance after the thing and just laughing about the silly things that we had done. And so really the first and the last time I had talked to Jack, he was laughing. And that was a lot of my experience with him. Shared an office for a long time, and I think you'll see tonight that's a reoccurring theme, is that he just made everybody feel wonderful, and jokes about a lot of stuff. He told me stories about all you guys right down here at one point or another. Now I'm getting faces, which is good. I'm sure he told some stories about us. But where I kind of picked up with him, he had come from Hanna-Barbera here in 1982, and like I said, it started E.T. Poltergeist time. It was a very small company at that point. Everybody was project. A lot of young people. George was the old guy, and he just had barely turned 40. The culture was kind of set for the way it still is today. Very open. People shared a lot of things. I was amazed the day I came in, and Dennis Murin and Ken Ralston showing me things, and these are guys that had already won Oscars, and Jack was part of that culture. Jack was the reason a lot of this of ILM is the way it is because of people like him. And I came from LA where I had done commercials, and people were very precious about their knowledge and very precious about sharing because it was so competitive, and it was such a different thing here. And I really do believe Jack was a huge part of that. He was always in the roto paint department at some point or another. Those are the guys, for folks that may not know, I mean, they're the last stop. Go through all these different generations, and if something's just not looking quite right, or there's something that's a little bit out, those are the last guys that touch it. He was really a master artist. If I'm composite supervisor now, kind of like a step right at the end with Jack, and if he was on a show of mine, my life just got easier. There were all sorts of things that we could just say, hey, you take that and you finish that off for us. It's not a real glamour position. It's not one that gets a lot of, we're not the big names, but we're the people that really do so much of the work. And he was just so good at that. And he did jump from like the buggy age of painting everything by hand and getting a little silly with the opaquing fluid because it was incredibly toxic. But he made the jump into computer graphics and painting over there because Jim Morris at the time was the head of ILM, and he felt that the folks in the traditional crafts, they knew what the end result was, and he knew that people like Jack were great painters, and we were writing programs. The computer graphics folks were writing programs and asking us, well, what do you need to do this? What do you need to get to do the equivalent of what we had been doing on film. And Jack was one of those guys that came over. He was nervous about the change. It's like, okay, you're used to, not totally unlike, okay, you're right-handed your whole life, now do everything left-handed. But we knew what, we called a paintbrush, and it was now, what do you call a paintbrush on this computer? And he was incredibly successful. But that was the time that I shared a lot of office time with him. And in our part of that, he really was an industry leader, a pioneer of moving these things in this very specific set of tasks. I guess I just can't emphasize enough about what an artist he was, and how much he brought to this company, and how much he saved this company as far as not having to go back on steps. But wasn't above using this position to, move things his way. There were any number of times that he painted out somebody that just annoyed him. Did they ask you? Well, no, the guy was looking at the camera, and this guy just is stupid, and he shouldn't be wearing those pants. Anyway, so again, I just know Jack from the last 30 years, and my part of the 30 years. Of his life that we shared. And I'm going to go to the earliest story. I've told this story to folks here before, and actually he's probably told it to most of you anyway, but just so it's covered and on tape. He said when we were both brought up Catholic, and we shared our altar boy stories and all those nun stories, and he said when he was 6 or 7, he was going to confession. It's a thing where you go talk to the priest and you tell him all your sins, and he absolves you, and you're free next week to do a bunch of other heinous stuff, and you come back and get absolved for that as well. But and when you're in 1st or 2nd grade, the nuns take you over there like every week. Like, what could you possibly do? It would be really bad that you're going to go to hell in a week if you're a 6-year-old. But that's the mentality we were dealing with the nuns, and then it gets to be a bit of a competition when you're young. You don't want to go in there with nothing. If you really were a good kid, you did all the right stuff, you kind of felt like a failure in front of the priest. Anyway, and Jack and I had a number of those discussions, but he said one time he went in and he said, "Bless me, Father, if I have sinned. It's been, 4 days since my last confession." It was a weekend. And he said, "I've committed adultery." Said the priest, you could hear him kind of talk like that. He said, "Okay, what exactly did you do?" And I said, "Well, my friends and I got together, and we were pretending we were adults, and we were dressing up, and so I committed adultery." So it's my earliest story that I have of him. Mary Harwood, who I've exchanged some emails with, she popped up on Facebook when she heard the news, and I don't know that many of us here knew that she was his prom date. And so she couldn't make it here, but I thought I just would read her the little note that she said. She said, "First of all, I appreciate you contacting me. I wish I could be there, and I'd love to be able to see if I can. Unfortunately, it didn't work out." She said, "I thought I should clarify that Jack was a year older than me, so he went to my senior prom in 1971. He always entertained us and had us in stitches no matter what we were doing. I've been trying to think of a memory I could tell about him. I tell them, and most of them we were pretty crazy kids and stories that just couldn't be told in front of the family." So Lord knows what it was, but she's still not willing to tell you guys. Statute of limitations has to have run out by now. Anyway, he said maybe he wouldn't want them told at all. I kind of doubt that. I think he'd be pretty down with the idea at this point. So I really don't have any stories that I can add at this time. So if I think of one, I'll let you know. But said she just misses him like crazy. Now, I saw a post on his Facebook today from Denise Nelson. Is she here? Yes. Oh. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I saw your thing, just high school friend. So just wave and say, hi, I'm a high school friend. And if you feel inspired to, later on or whatever, you got some story, we're more than happy, but remember, his dad's sitting right down here. Anyway. When we heard that Jack had passed away, Linwin put out a thing. The Yoda fountain is over a couple buildings from here, and we all got together 2 o'clock or whatever, and just had a moment of silence for him. There are a number of folks that have been through ILM and moved along. A bunch of, or some are at 3210 and in Cam D. And, oh, that was Molatory, because I'm telling her story. So they knew we were doing our moment of silence at 2 o'clock, and Leah Aga told me that she said they actually had a moment of mayhem. They went over to Foodles out front and just yelled and screamed while we were being, whatever. But I just thought that was cute. So I asked Terry. Terry goes way back with him to the time that I was there in Roto and Paint. And I was trying to get her to come forward and tell a story, but anyway. She said, just let me, we set this up. Foodles, for folks that don't know, down at Kerner, there's a little cafe, and back in the time of the story, it was run by Mrs. Lee, who was an interesting one, because you go in there and say, I'd like, a bagel and coffee, and that would be $2.39. Go the next day, I want a bagel and coffee, it could be $3.50. Back the next, it's a wandering thing. And the prices were on the wall, which was so bizarre. And the food was okay, it wasn't bad, it was incredibly convenient being right there. But she had immigrated here, and she wasn't always quite understanding of our culture, and sometimes she was pretty direct. But anyways, Terry's thing is, she said, Jack and Joanne Hafner, who I'll talk a little bit about later, they walked into Foodles, and Mrs. Lee said to Hafner, how much you weigh? And you can imagine, Joanne's look on her face. But Jack, without skipping a beat, said, I don't know, but the two of us are 2 tons of fun. And I love that story just because Jack was, good on his feet, and I just love the protection. Because I always kind of felt with him as he was always there for you. And man, I never heard, he certainly gossiped. He was good about that. But I can't think of a time where I heard him say anything mean about folks. And certainly always standing up for people. This is just because I'm kind of going a bit chronologically. Ellen Lickworth was the head of the animation department when I got hired. Don't listen to this one. She hired me for 2 months. I've been milking that job ever since. Just saying, they didn't sign a contract or anything. But this is probably my last day. Anyway, she had come with Jack from Hanna-Barbera, and was just part of this group that I walked in. And Chuck Eiler was there, who I haven't seen for probably 25 years, and walked in and, anyway, but from back in those times. She said unfortunately she couldn't be here, but she said she was the one person, I was just asking for stories, she was the one person who always made me laugh, not chuckle, but side-splitting guffaws. He said, I remember eating sushi with him in Sausalito, and he'd order a side of wasabi as big as an ice cream scoop. And he could handle it. Everything he did was with the greatest gusto for her life. I'll miss him dearly.